Hey y'all, I'm Heather and welcome to my channel, The Debt-Free Quilter. Now today's video is going to be just a little bit different. As you can probably hear, I have caught another cold. These minions need to quit bringing stuff home from school. Parenthood, isn't it wonderful? Okay, today we are going to be working on the checkerboard block for our Gnome-ster moon. Now, I do not like how this pattern for this block is written. It has a lot of extra little finicky pieces that I don't think are necessary. Now, you notice that my example block is a little bit bigger today. This was supposed to be the small block, but it's not because my math was wrong. So I had to spend a little bit of time doing some quilt math with some scrap pieces to find the right size. And for these ones, I can tell you the sizes I used. I used 2-inch squares for this one, which turned out to be my medium size. The small size needs 1.5 inches. And the large one, I'm going to use 2.5-inch squares because, like I said, I don't want all those extra seams. I don't think it's necessary, and I think it can be done a lot faster without all the extra little finicky crap. So, see, this is one of the reasons I don't like sampler quilts. Because sometimes the patterns are written in a way that just makes me want to smack somebody. But you know, to each their own. If you want to follow the pattern, please follow the pattern. If you don't want all those extra little finicky seams, let's get busy and do this a little bit simpler way. Okay. So what I'm going to start with, these were 3-inch squares, cut in half once on the diagonal. So what we want to do first is lay out how we want our block to be. As you can see, I am laying this out on point because that is how they want the block to look. They want it to look on point like so. Now I'm going to take my background squares that are 2.5 inches. These will behave. And lay out in the middle. Now, fair warning, my quilt math could still be a little bit off. But I would rather be a little bit big than too small. Because if I wind up trimming off my points to this block, I don't care. It's my block. At this present juncture, it's not going anywhere, so I'm not overly concerned with it. Now I'm laying these triangles this way. Oh, no, that one was 3.5. Okay. The 3.5-inch ones I have for these corners out here. And for over out here. Okay. So never mind me, I made all of these 3.5 inches, probably because I was lazy. And it doesn't matter because we can trim off these corners anyway. But if you didn't want to use the triangles, you can still use 2.5 inch squares. It's not much gonna matter. And I wind up with extra, and that's fine. May need them somewhere else. Okay. So we have our block laid out. What I'm going to do now is explain to you how I'm going to sew this, because talking can make me cough a lot. So if I explain it now, I can take it to the sewing machine and sew it all. And I'll be pressing it with my pressing stick for time's sake. It's a quick sew this way. It's not super tedious. As long as you keep all your rows in the right spot, it's not going to matter. So what I'm going to start with doing is sew these two, then these two. Then I'll come back and attach that one to this side. Then I will bring this piece back and sew these two, and so on forth until I get to the corners. The corners will go on, okay, these two corners here will go on last. This one I can attach as a row by itself. This one is a row by itself after the middle is assembled. But when I get all of these individual squares sewn together, I will come back and attach this to this and this to this. And then once that is done, I will attach these two. And I will be trimming off these extra long dog ears as I go when I get to the assembly portion, when I'm sewing my rows together, because they will get in the way if I don't. Okay, I hope I've explained it as best I can. We're going to go to the machine, we're going to sew everything together, and we will press at the end. Okay, as we can see here, here's our center row. I pressed everything away from center and everything toward the background. Excuse me. And when I trim it down, even if I lose some points, it's not too bad. All of the squares I used were 2.5 inches. All of the triangles I used were 3.5 inches. You can get away with 3 inches. Then here's our smallest one. As you can see, my trimming on this one is not perfect. This one I trimmed down to 5 inches square. I have a little extra room on this side and not quite enough over there, but you know what, that happens. It's not perfect, it's not gonna be perfect. I'm okay with that. Now I hope I explained today's video as best I could. Like I said, talking a lot will make me cough right now, and that's hard enough. So as I've said, I used 2.5 inches for these squares, 2.5 inches background squares, of which I only needed 4. 3.5 inch squares cut on the diagonal once I used for all of my exterior setting triangles over here, of which I trimmed the extra large dog ears off. For the small block I used 1.5 inch squares and 2 inch triangles, again cut on the diagonal once. And then for the medium block I used 2 inch squares, 2 inch background squares, and 2.5 inch squares for the setting triangles. Again, cut diagonally once. As I've said before, this made this a much faster sew than it would have had I used all the teensy tiny pieces they wanted me to. I thought that was over the top. I thought it was extravagant. I thought it would make a lot more seams than I wanted in this block, and I think I'm right. If you don't want to have a bunch of extra seams that you just really don't need, take the time, do a little math, figure out what size you want to use if you want to make this a different size. There are tools out there to help you. Honestly, none come to mind off the top of my head, and I did a lot of it myself on paper. But it came out. Here's their block, for example. There's a lot of extra seams in here. And on this one, you can really see there's extra seams. I really don't feel like all the extra seams are necessary for this block. So I chose to do it differently. And you can too. You do not have to make a block according to the pattern that is set before you if you have thought of a different way to do it. By all means, do it differently if you need to, or if you feel you want to. It's always good to learn how to make a block like that. Like that, they wanted a square and a square, which is fine. Square and a square is a great block. It turns out really nice. But you don't have to do it that way for a checkerboard block. You don't have to make a bunch of square and a squares to make a checkerboard block. You just don't have to, so why? Especially on something that's going to be this small. My answer? I'm not doing it that way. Anyhow, so we have our small, our medium, which wound up being our test block this time, and our large, which wound up being our tutorial this time. This one's the time lapse. It's less than a minute long. Anyhow, that will be it for today's video. Have a great day. Have a great week. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye.